Hey friends, Allison here. Welcome back to my channel. I have a new double page layout to share with you today. It is a hybrid layout in that the typing was done with my computer. I typed it and then printed it with my Epson printer, and then also added some Cricut work as well, but you'll see as the video goes along that most of it is edited and cut out. Lots of changes happened with this layout today. It did not come together very easily, but I'm so happy with the finished product. So one of the pages in this layout measures 7 by 8¼ inches tall. The other layout is a traveler's notebook size layout. It's what I call a traveler's notebook size layout. It's 4.5 inches wide by 8¼ inches tall. I know that TNs are narrower than that, they're smaller than that. I really struggle with scrapbooking on that size, but I really like 4.5 by 8¼ Both the layouts are going to go in my album without a page protector. So the only part of the Cricut work that I didn't cut out is the title, which says Mom Life. I used my new favorite font that I found in the font image library. It's called Headline News. Love it. Love it, love it. And I like it, the black and white too. I used a black pen to draw it, attach it to a rectangle shape in Cricut Design Space, and then cut and draw the entire shape. Around that is a yellow border that I also created with the Cricut. All I did to create that was convert a rectangle to a draw shape instead of a cut, and then attach it to the same rectangle that Mom Life is attached to, and then cut the whole thing at once. That was done with yellow. It's actually called mustard ink. I am supplementing this layout with physical products from Coco Vanilla Studio These Days. I absolutely love that floral pattern paper and the polka dot pattern paper in the background behind that. I've been hoarding it, quite honestly. And I thought that these papers would be perfect for this layout. I also discovered when I pulled out the florals from this collection that I haven't even really touched the floral die cut pack from These Days. So I made a mental note to start using them a little bit more in my crafting, since I know I have so much of them and they're so pretty. I turned to the puffy sticker sheet from These Days, and I'm adding these super cute little hearts scattered across the Mom Life title. This is where things are going to start changing. The puffy hearts stay where they are, but the flower with the leaves that I glued down, and then the little phrase that I created with my Cricut, which says faith over fear, I'm actually going to pull off. I ended up not liking it, and I'm going to replace it with some other die cuts from the These Days collection. So I did that off camera. The top of the page is already, actually might have just left it for now, but I moved down to the bottom of the page and I'm adding these floral die cuts from the floral die cut pack from These Days. I'm using liquid glue to attach them all, and I'm layering them up, and I'm going to put a flower on top of that, and then a phrase that I created with my Cricut using the draw and cut function. But after I get everything adhered, I decide I don't like the phrase that I put on top of it, which is, I got this, and I opt for a sticker from the sticker sheet from this collection, and I just throw it on top instead of peeling it off. So here I was just looking for the right kind of flower to put down there at the bottom. I didn't like the yellow. It would have worked, but I wanted blue instead, so I pulled off this blue flower. I'm using liquid glue to attach it as well. It will hang off the page a little bit, so I will cut the excess off once everything is adhered. Now I'm just going to attach this little phrase that I created with my Cricut using liquid glue as well. So it's at this point that I go back to the top of the page and completely revamp it. So you can see that I pulled off the flower and everything that was in the center of that Mom Life phrase, and I decided to use one of the butterflies from the die cut packs from These Days. This one was the right size to cover up some of the tearing that happened when I pulled everything off. A little tip, if you ever do this in the future, and you use liquid glue to attach your items, using your Cricut spatula is a great way to kind of pry things off your paper after you have already adhered them. Sometimes if you're lucky, it's not often, you'll be able to pull them off without tearing the paper, but more often than not, you do, but the tearing is minimal, I find anyways, when I use my little spatula. So just food for thought. Now here I decided that I needed to add a little bit something extra to the layout base because there was a really wide margin between the edge of the white mats, like the pattern paper mats, and the edge of the cardstock base. On that side, that is where the holes are going to be punched so that the layout can be put inside my album. So I'm going to once again pull the entire mat off of my cardstock base. You can see that it tore the paper pretty good. I'm not worried about it. At first I was just going to turn the paper around and then adhere it, but in the end I decided to flip it close to my heart. Cardstock is fantastic for that because it has two different shades of the same color on one sheet. So one side is the true color and then you flip the other side over and it's slightly lighter. So I started off using the lighter shade. When I flipped it over, it went to the darker side, and I was fine with that. It still coordinates with the layout. In hindsight, though, rather than using the papaya cardstock that I have in the background, like a sage green would have been really nice too, and probably would have looked a little nicer than the papaya, just because it's such a strong, bold color. If I ever did this layout again, I'd probably go back and use green instead. So you can see that I had pulled out my punch that I've had in my stash for ages. That's a scallop border punch. I didn't want to use my Cricut, go back to the Cricut and create a scalloped border. So I just pulled out a punch to do that and then punched it from this ombre paper, also from the These Days collection. After I got everything assembled back on the 7x8 1/4 layout base, I moved on to now the TN layout base. And I thought that after I adhered my photo to the floral pattern paper, that it needed a little something else to go behind that floral paper. So I went back to that ombre paper and matted my photo and floral paper to that, using my ATG. Here I'm just trimming off the excess and throwing the rest out. If you have paper like this that has a hole in it and you have items that are large enough to cover it, it's a really great way to use up that paper without wasting it. So I'm getting that adhered to my papaya base as well. The cardstock base measures 4.5 by 8 1/4 tall. The floral pattern paper measures 4 inches by 8. And then, of course, the mat on the ombre paper is slightly larger than that. And then my photo I printed at home, and it measures, I think it's 3 3/4 by 7 3/4 tall. I converted that photo to black and white as well, and then printed it with my Epson computer. So here I'm going to one of the 6x8 cut apart sheets. I only have the 6x8 paper pad in my stash, so that's what I was creating with today. And I'm cutting out some of these phrases that were on the cut apart sheet. I have 2 here. I really like the blue one. The white one I kind of hummed and hawed over and ended up going back to the cut apart sheet and pulling off this coral colored phrase. I don't know at the moment what they say, but they do relate to the story. So the story that I'm sharing today is just about some of my fears as a mom, kind of exploring that topic a little bit and getting them onto paper and off my chest. And I used the history word prompt from Ellie Edwards to get this story documented as well. I thought it was fitting for this topic. Without going into too much detail, I find that I kind of compare my own upbringing with my kids' and hope that theirs is better, and the changes that I strive to make is making a difference. So that's what this layout's about. Here are the close-ups. Thank you so much for joining me today, friends. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope you enjoy my layout as much as I do. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and a like. If you'd like to see more videos like this, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'll be back again soon with more creative inspiration. Bye, friends.